Hello. How are you? You're probably wondering why I'm posting a Halloween-themed video 6 days after Halloween. Unfortunately, Halloween was not on a Monday this year, so I had to settle for the closest date to that on my uploading schedule. Let's pretend it's still Halloween, nobody's gonna notice, right? This time I'm here with a Halloween sketchbook spread featuring some of the characters from my upcoming webcomic, The Reverent Silence. I'm probably going to do a Christmas sketchbook spread with the main characters also, since I really like to get festive around the holiday season. And with Halloween having come and gone, I think it's safe to say that the holiday season is officially underway. But before I begin to ramble, if you're interested in this video, make sure to like, subscribe, and follow my socials in the description. If you want to support me further, you can also find me on Ko-fi and Etsy. Those are in the description as well. With all of that said, strap your butts in because here we go! Okay, back to rambling about Halloween. Last year when I was still on BookTube, although I do still talk about books once in a blue moon, I made a video called The Paranormal Enthusiast's Guide to Halloween, where I talked about the paranormal side of Halloween and a bunch of other tidbits and fun facts, including a crash course on the history of Halloween. Despite the creepy vibes and the fact that the veil between the living and the dead is at its thinnest on Halloween, the biggest risk you run most of the time is overloading on sugar from all the candy you probably collected. Halloween has always been one of my favorite holidays because of the costume part of it mostly, but also the excitement of going trick-or-treating around the neighborhood when I was a kid. When I was in elementary school, we'd also have a Halloween parade where we just walk around the school grounds, and I think walk up and down the road as well. This was about 20 years ago, so honestly, most of the details have been lost to time. But I still have a photo from my first grade Halloween parade where I dressed up as a fairy. I still dress up in some way every year, and as I'm writing the first bits of the script, I'm literally wearing a witch hat. I may also have attempted to settle the debate of all time by comparing right Twix with left Twix. What can I say, this time only comes around once a year. Anyway, for a few weeks now I wanted to do a Halloween-themed sketchbook spread, and as I said, I might do a Christmas spread, but whether I put the process of that spread on the channel, I still need to decide on that since my video schedule is currently backed up to July. Help! So before I have my 283rd existential crisis of the year, let's get to the topic of today's video. This is most of the main cast, obviously not the entire main cast, but the ones I really wanted to include in this spread specifically. The ones that aren't here will probably be in the Christmas spread. I featured most if not all of them on the channel before, and I'll be introducing each of them formally very soon. In fact, I've got something special planned for my next video. No spoilers. After deciding which of the characters I wanted to feature, it came down to deciding which costumes each of them would wear, and I made that decision based on several factors, but mainly it was their general vibe and what they were most likely to wear on Halloween. Although, low-key, I decided to have Nadia all the way on the right be dressed as a witch because I also really wanted to put her in a witch outfit. I was originally going to give her a robot costume since she's an automaton, but in the end I was like, nah, it's a bit too obvious. Even though she probably would, since being on the nose would be very Nadia of her. As for everyone else from left to right, we have Emmerich, who's dressed as a vampire, Stig, who's dressed as a scarecrow, Aspen, who's dressed as a jester, Peter, who's a pirate, Safia, who is technically a candy corn, and Lark, who is dressed as one of the greatest memes of the last decade. Left Shark. Lark's choice of costume when I was deciding what everyone was going to wear was a must for me, and in my head I thought, Lark has to be Left Shark. This is destiny. Well, okay, they're not actually a shark, they're a blue glaucus, but given that Lark would take any and every opportunity to meme... yeah. Of everyone here, Safia's outfit is the one that's least like a Halloween costume. She's not really one to dress up for the holidays, or for really anything in particular, unless it's a very important function. But she is dressed in candy corn colors for this spread, so I guess she's just going along with the group in true Safia fashion, as if to say, fine, I'll entertain these zoomers for like 10 seconds and then I'm out. The last sketchbook spread that I did was for Mermaid, where I did a more conceptual character design type spread. I designed a mermaid with some dark space void vibes. Even though her space powers seem like something worth exploring, I honestly think she might just be a one-off for that sketchbook spread because I haven't come back to her since May. And that also happens to be the last time I did a full sketchbook spread. I really should do more of these. Oops. But back to the topic. I spent a while thinking of the composition. I knew where some of the characters like Nadia were going to be, but I also thought of how many people were going to be in the sketchbook spread. Putting the entire main cast in here would have been an interesting challenge, but I didn't want to overcrowd the illustration, and I also didn't want to make myself suffer. I also consulted Pinterest, praise be to Pinterest, for design inspiration on the costumes, combining 2 or more costumes I found into one design. I also looked at Pinterest for pose reference, making several changes for the finished product. I've said it before and I'll say it again, reference is your bestie. Once the pencils were done, it was time to do the line art, using old reliables, my set of Winsor and Newton pigment liners. I was very careful in trying to avoid as many blunders as possible, since it's been a very terrible tendency of mine to ink places I'm not supposed to. I did mostly well this time around, but there are some design inconsistencies I didn't catch until later on, like the layers of Aspen's hair or the extra strands of hair in Stig's case. Well, I mean, it's a lot too late to change it, so maybe if I act like they got new haircuts for Halloween, maybe no one will notice, right? Right? I used thin lines for some of the finer details, and wide lines for things like the clothes and the shape of the hair itself. Once all of that was done, I went with a 1mm liner for the external outlines, making the lines on the outside thicker, but leaving the inside lines thinner. Then to prevent any smudging during the coloring process, I let the ink dry overnight. Usually I'd wait an hour or so, but I did not want to take chances, like at all. And I have also heard that letting the ink dry overnight yields better results in this case, so I'm rolling with it. Now for the best part, the coloring. I used a combination of different markers for this, including Prismacolor, Copics, and Ohuhu markers, along with markers from a brand called Sheffield Crafts. If you couldn't tell, I have a bit of a marker problem. And we are not going to talk about how bad my marker problem is. In some instances, such as the hair, I put down a lighter color first for the highlights before going in with a darker color over that, just for that extra bit of color depth. Although in the case of Aspen's hair, I did go over with more layers than I intended, specifically for the shading. It was either not dark enough for the shadows or too dark, and it took several tries before I actually got the color I wanted. Saying this fully aware that swatching is a thing. Oh, how I wish there was a Command-Z button for traditional art. Anyway, there were a few choices that were unintentional, but in times like these, you just have to trust the process, while trying not to cry in your bathtub. Live, laugh, love. Cry in your tub, I guess. Until recently with my markers, I'd just do like the top to bottom or left to right motion when applying the ink, but the problem with that is it usually causes a streak-like effect, leading to a finish that's quite unpleasant to look at. What I did instead is apply the marker ink in a circular motion, which gives you a more solid look than the other method I mentioned. It does look a little splotchy in some areas, but honestly I'd rather have this than seeing unintentional marker streaks in my finished artwork. And if it wasn't for me seeing that tip a few months ago, I probably would have just continued to make the same mistake. I still get nightmares from it sometimes. Anyhow, when I wasn't forgetting that swatches exist, I would do some on the back of the swatch paper I had from the Ohuhu markers to see if those colors were the ones I wanted for a character or their costume, and if I thought they would look good. I wanted Aspen to have some reddish colors for his costume with some pink accents, since pink is his signature color, but I ultimately went with a majority of his costume being pink. I guess this was fate, just like Lark being left shark. I do think the red ruffles give a bit of a nice contrast though, along with the dark gray trousers. Something that was a bit more spontaneous was the color scheme of Nadia's witch costume. Her signature color is yellow, but I noticed that the gray I used for the ribbon in her hat along with her gloves had a cool tone to it, so I chose to have the color accents for her costume be purple. If you look, you can also see the pendant she wears on her choker being worn on her hat. I just figured I should put it somewhere else for a change, even though she almost always wears it around her neck. There are a couple more costumes that are or are almost a complete departure from the character's signature color, like with Emmerich and Stig. Even though Emmerich's magic color is dark gray, his default character design has him dressed in various shades of brown, barring his black shirt, of course, so combined with the red, this was certainly something pretty different for him. But the formality and the sharpness of the vampire costume fit well with his overall aesthetic, and that's part of the reason I gave him that costume. As for Stig, his signature color is this bright green, but if you look at his costume, there isn't really any bit of green on there at all. I was aiming for a more classic scarecrow outfit with him, but looking back on it now, I wonder what a scarecrow look more in line with his aesthetic would have looked like. Well, there is always next time. But it's still really interesting to see what your own characters look like in colors that aren't usually associated with them or their general aesthetic. After several hours coloring the characters in, it was time to finish everything up. To give the spread a more finished look, I wanted to go in with a block of color covering most of the negative space. I wanted to do orange, but I was faced with one last dilemma. Safia's outfit. You'll see that she's dressed mostly in orange, and to give this spread an orange background would make it hard for her to stand out amongst the rest of the group, because her headdress would blend in with background color. I did ultimately go with the orange background, leaving just a bit of white space up on top because I felt like it needed to breathe a bit, and I knew having the whole thing be orange would be unsettling. To me, anyway. But I used the power of life hacks. I outlined everyone with a darker shade of orange, almost like this reddish brown, going past the orange block of color to give it that extra pop. But it also serves to make everyone stand out from the background, including Safia. Crisis averted. And to finish everything off, I put my signature. So, what else? Halloween has come and gone, so my family and I are preparing for Thanksgiving. It's Foodsgiving in my heart. Also, can we talk about how there are only 2 months left in the year? Literally, where did the time go? Oh no, help. Anyway, the sketchbook spread was a lot of fun to work on. I'm almost halfway through the sketchbook, so I'll definitely be thinking about what to put in my sketchbook for that. But as of right now, I have no ideas. The Christmas spread is going to happen though. It might not get a video, as I said, but I still intend to share it on my social media like I do with a lot of my recent artwork that I featured on the channel. And you'll likely be seeing it in a community post as well. But nevertheless, that's going to do it for this video. If you liked this and you want to see more from me, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Make sure to check out my Ko-fi and my Etsy shop, along with all of my socials in the description, and leave a ghost emoji in the comments if you made it this far. Thanks for watching.